Welcome to Dare, the show for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders who dare to shape the future. Your hosts today are Ned Hayes and Cecilia Mariani. Dare is brought to you by Darwaf, the superpower tech team that can make your vision a reality. The Dare podcast is excited to welcome Pablo Prado. He's the founder and CEO of Livivos. He has only over 25 years of experience developing commercial products. He's founded and co-founded 4 tech companies. He's held leadership positions in a number of companies, and he has a PhD in physics with 2 postdocs. So it's exciting to talk to such a well-educated and successful entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Pablo.
And Ned, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very interested in having this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So tell me first about your company, Livivos.
So Livivos was founded with the idea that we can help with some very important gaps in liver disease diagnosis. Because today you can have a very accurate measure of the amount of fat you have in your liver in an MRI instrument or with a biopsy, which is, they are both techniques that you cannot have to the masses or you cannot reach many people with. So the idea of Livivos is take that accuracy you have in MRI and deliver it in point of care. And that could open the door to really change the trend of this disease.
Right. So how did you first come on this idea?
My specialty is in magnetic resonance and portable open instruments. And about 10 years ago, somebody asked me if I can measure the amount of iron content in the liver just to check for iron overload. And reading about this, we thought, yes, that's possible. But what was evident by the literature is that the amount of fat in your liver is more important. And it's a very high prevalence disease. About 1 out of 4 people have liver disease, and measuring the amount of fat in the liver is the first barrier of entry to understand what the disease is looking like. So I started looking at how do I do this with a portable system? Can we do this in point of care? And the idea of starting with iron in the liver ended up at looking at other biomarkers in the liver, and liver fat was the first candidate, and we started developing an instrument around that idea.
Fantastic. Well, what's the result like from people who can benefit from your work?
So the patients will benefit in the sense that when this product is rolled out, they can have a measurement of their liver fat in a hepatology clinic, in a hospital. This is a point of care measurement that they cannot have today. Their blood biomarkers may be indicating that something is going on with your liver, but you don't have the accuracy to diagnose the liver disease in point of care. So in this pathway of diagnosis, if we can have a simple, low-cost point-of-care solution to have an accurate measurement of the amount of fat in the liver and probably other biomarkers, the patient could have a diagnosis that is accurate on the spot, and then the clinician can make a decision based on the numbers that come out of our device.
So one thing that I noticed in looking at the Livivos website is how long the cycle is to get something approved. I mean, in the tech world that many of our entrepreneurs work in, you can have an idea, you can even create that idea. If you want to, you can put a patent around it. But within 6 months, you can actually get something in market and start testing it. But when we're dealing with actual patient care products, I mean, your website shows that the proof of concept was out there in 2014. You file a patent in 2017, and you're still not fully in market because the FDA approval process is quite long, right?
Oh, you're correct. And it is the cost of working in a very regulated market. And we had to make these decisions in 2018 when we started with the product development. What's the pathway for an approval? What's the reimbursement like? Having a working product is probably just half of the story here. And having it in the market and making it viable from the financial point of view is the other half. So we made a plan to do this. We are fortunate that there are lots of test trials with MRI in a measurement called proton density fat fraction. This is a measurement of how much fat you have in your liver. So MRI already developed this market. Many clinical trials are using this as a biomarker to check the efficacy of drugs. So what we are doing is we are saying that we can measure the PDFF, the fat content, with an accuracy equivalent to the MRI. So the approval process goes through a channel that is simpler than starting a full study where it includes the biopsies and you have to prove the correlation with other ways to do it in an invasive way. We are comparing directly this PDFF parameter in what you do in an MRI and what you do in our products called the liver scope. So the studies are simple in that regard, that we compare a number that comes from the MRI with a number that comes from the liver scope. And that is a path that should accelerate the approval process. These studies are going on now.
Right, right. And that's one of the final gates that you have to pass through to actually get the product.
Yes and no. The device is now an investigational device. So we can do studies, we can do sponsored studies. We are in conversation with the pharma companies to do that. We have received some funding from pharma companies because you can use it as an investigational device. So we cannot sell it. There will be no reimbursement until we get the approval and we go through that process. But, it can already be used and, it's a way for the company to get revenues and get more data. We are always eager to get more results in this comparison between the MRI and the liver scope. So our business strategy has pre-reimbursement and post-reimbursement component of it, right? Because of all these.
Yeah, it's a complicated strategy when you're dealing with highly regulated industries. I know this from talking to other startups. So one thing that I found really interesting about healthcare too is that it's an incremental game, right? Like most changes in healthcare at this stage are not vast changes. Like we did see a big change when the weight loss drugs came out. Like that changed the game. But with things like the liver or cancers or other things, it's an incremental moving the ball forward, making things more efficient, more precise, more targeted. I mean, like just on cancers, like the cancer death rate has fallen 32%, according to the American Cancer Society, from 1991 to 2019. But each year it was a tiny step forward. And so what you're doing is moving from like a full body MRI into something that's much easier for a doctor to use. It's much easier and probably cheaper for an individual to be able to test with it. So is that accurate? Is this one of those incremental steps forward in healthcare that really makes a difference?
I wouldn't call it incremental, I would call it transformative. Because if you look at now, what are the pathways to diagnose liver disease? You start with blood. Then, depending on what you see in these biomarkers, you may move into some ultrasound base of technology. And after that, you're running out of non-invasive tools very quickly. And you either do something that is non-invasive and expensive, like an MRI, or you go invasive as a biopsy. So the pathway is always trying to do as much as you can non-invasively, low cost. Then you go non-invasive, expensive, and only then you get to an accurate diagnosis. But you have the liver scope in the front end at something that goes faster than a blood test, and it can be in all the clinics. You get your accurate measurement from the start. And this is important not only for just clinical diagnosis, but also in the pharma study. You're qualifying a patient, go through blood, ultrasound, MRI. You spend $7,000 to $9,000 to figure out if this patient is qualifying or not for your clinical study. If you have the liver scope in the front end, the fat content before you do everything else, and you will be going faster and lower cost.
Yeah. So my little monologue and incremental doesn't even apply to you. Like you're really transformative because you're changing the whole diagnostic game when it comes to the liver, right?
That's correct. And the idea is today we're working on the liver fat, but we are looking at other biomarkers because the idea will be you have one device that does the full diagnosis instead of using, you use an ultrasound-based technology, you use an MRI or an NMR-based technology. We are working on adding more biomarkers. So in fact, we get a second grant from NIH to explore the second biomarker that we're adding. And at the same time, we're measuring a third biomarker. Because the idea will be have one device that gives you the full diagnosis. You don't need to go through this chain of non-invasive testing and ended up in an invasive test.
Right. Well, adding all of those biomarkers, I'm sorry, but it just reminds me of the Star Trek tricorder, that you're able to see all these biomarkers in one instrument. Is that like 30 years from now? Could you see that being a viable goal for technologies like this?
Well, the tricorder is handheld and you put in your pocket. We still need a permanent magnet, which you don't want to have in your pocket yet.
Yeah, maybe not.
But we definitely see a smaller, even more portable version of this device that can do a measurement that's accurate enough to give you clinical value. Not everything has to be accurate within a 1%. You can
Hmm.
have something smaller that does something that has a clinical value to make a decision. Important. You give enough information for the expert to make a decision. And we're just providing the top accuracy in our device. We may have a trade-off between the size of the device and the accuracy at a point that we have another more portable device. But we're focusing on now delivering the accuracy of the MRI in the point of care. That's what our goal at the moment.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, there are of course near-term goals, but eventually what I heard is we're going to get there.
That's correct, and it goes by amplifying the applications in the platform that we are building now, and then going into different configurations, so you can have it in different places. And as you said, maybe much smaller. This is a portable thing that you can check. You want to check millions of people. If you look at the numbers, so many people are walking around without an idea that they have fatty liver. 1 out of 4 people in
Mm,
the U.S. have fatty liver. I know a big fraction of those will develop in what used to be called NASH, and now it's MASH. And they won't know until the disease is quite advanced. So we want to screen as many people as possible.
yeah.
So the goal is to do it fast and low cost and not just for the clinical trials, for the general population. And if you look at the numbers, we could really make a difference in the general population healthcare because now you will identify these patients that will have an increased risk of a cardiovascular event, but you're capturing early on. Maybe you change your diet, your lifestyle, and then it doesn't develop in a more severe disease. You save that person from a heart attack because you don't
Yeah.
hear about people dying from liver disease per se. You hear people dying from a heart attack, but there's a very strong correlation. The risk of a cardiovascular event goes up very quickly as your liver start having these issues, right? So we could make a big impact in the global healthcare.
Right, right. So your point about global healthcare is important though, because like some very industrialized nations can afford to have an MRI machine at a local hospital. But if you're in the middle of the Sudan or you're even in a less populous region of the country, like in Patagonia in Argentina, it's hard to get an MRI machine down there, the local hospital. But your product, you could actually get there and it could be more accessible to make diagnostic procedures more available to the general population all around the world, right?
Absolutely. No, I gave a presentation at the International Society of Magnetic Resonance Medicine in Singapore in May, and it was dedicated to the exact topic that you're mentioning now, is low field MRI, because you also have these MRI instruments that are more portable, dedicated to specific applications that could really help in these underserved societies. So how do we deliver the quality healthcare in these places that will not afford an MRI? You look like I think between 50 and 70% of the world population have zero access to an MRI, but they could have access to a low field, low cost MRI. For our type of diagnostic, it's not an MRI machine. We're not doing images. We're just providing you the quality diagnostic that you get in an MRI. So yes, it is our plan to also go into this. I didn't want to even call them market, these locations where we can make a big difference, right? We have behind all the needs that they have without the need of spending the money for an MRI machine.
Right, right. Because they're hugely expensive. How expensive is an MRI machine?
And it's in the order of now $2-3 million for an MRI machine.
Wow. So I don't want you to reveal your pricing, but I assume that your pricing would be cheaper than that.
Yes, and we're planning to not sell it up front, to just let people use it, and then now they will be paying per test, easier barrier of entry. So, you have many patients, you're in a pathology clinic, we just install the instrument. And at the moment that we have reimbursement figured out and CPT codes, you will be reimbursed for the test, and we will have a fraction of that as our revenue. And before we do that, there will be some ways to have revenue from the instrument because of, for example, a sponsor starting with pharma. So yes, the idea will be not to sell it as a capital equipment, but to have the revenues come over time because of the tests that you're doing. And we think there is a scenario that is beneficial for the patient, first of all, because they have access to the technology, to the clinician and the clinic, because they can also keep part of this profit for the company, and global healthcare. And the patient happy to have a lower cost on something that will save them all these expenses, hundreds of billions of dollars a year in the US alone, because these diseases are progressing and you're not capturing them early. So they should be happy to have a payment in the front end that is much lower than everything that comes after that.
Right. Besides the billions of dollars, it's people's lives. You're actually saving lives, improving quality of life, making life better for families and for patients.
Yeah. Number one, patient. So you capture it early, you have a bit elevated fat, you change your diet, change your lifetime, you prevented everything that comes after.
Yeah, fantastic. So, this is a really interesting breakthrough. As you said, it can be transformative for global health. But you came to this company with a significant background in magnetic resonance. You've actually served as a reviewer for the Journal of Magnetic Resonance. I did not know that was a journal. You've worked at 4 or 5 different companies that you've helped to co found. So, tell us about your background and how you got into this very interesting field.
I got into this field through the technology, not through the medical applications, by my training in magnetic resonance, applying the technique to different type of industrial security applications. All my magnetic resonance work has been in non-conventional techniques. So, NMR is using the chemical lab with this high field instrument, expensive, large. My career went in a different direction. Or where else can we take this? Where can we capture other markets and make a difference? And understanding the trade-offs when you are developing a product, when you make it smaller, what happens with the sensitivity? What happens with what you see? So we found a few niches that ended up being products that are today in the market. I think the idea of delivering that in this medical device is what could make the biggest impact of everything that I've done in my career. So I'm completely focused on this now because we put all the knowledge in this type of devices on this product with the idea of how small can we do it, what is the lowest cost we can achieve, and deliver the performance. So my technical career, magnetic resonance, PhD, postdoc, it all makes sense only when you deliver it in something that makes a difference at the end of the day. And this product, in my view, is the clear winner in that regards because of the number of patients that are suffering from this disease.
Yeah, absolutely. So you came to this through the technology and through that background. And you started with like radio frequency and stuff. So if you could very briefly explain to our audience what is magnetic resonance and how does it relate to frequencies? And if you could keep this under an hour, that would be great.
I'll try to do it under 3 minutes. How is that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Well, the idea with magnetic resonance is that you use the atoms that are already in material that you're going to explore as your signature of some properties that you want to see. And this is what MRI does in human tissue. We look at a property of the atoms that are affected by external magnetic fields. So we have a permanent magnet, very strong magnetic field. In our case, is thousands of times the Earth's magnetic field. When they add this field, they have some type of alignment with the magnetic field. If you use a pulse of radio frequency, you kick them out of that position of comfort, of equilibrium, then they will go back to this equilibrium, giving you information about what's in the surrounding areas of that atom. So you use the atom to give you information about the surrounding. For example, you can see is a water molecule moving really fast? Is it moving slowly? Is the water molecule in certain cavities? Is that a water molecule or is it a fat molecule?
Yeah.
The way these nuclear spins go back to equilibrium have all that information, and you can capture it in an antenna. You use a very sensitive antenna to capture this information, and we know how to translate that into the properties of the tissue that we want to observe. So everybody now, so they can give me a call and I can give you that information.
Well, what you described in terms of detecting molecules almost reminds me of the way that astronomers look at the stars and understand spectrum shift. you
It
know?
is the same principle, but at a different frequency range.
Of course.
Now, if you look at in astronomy, you may be looking at gigahertz. You're looking at millions of hertz of turns per second. In MRI, you are looking at maybe hundreds of megahertz, and we are looking at a few megahertz. So the frequencies that are several orders of magnitude lower than what the astronomers look at. But it's a similar concept. Now, how are these different materials reacting in different frequency ranges? Or how is the dynamic of these materials that we're observing or properties that we're observing, how is that changing with different frequency or wavelength that we're using? So the idea of radio waves and light is all same with waves in different frequency ranges. And it goes all the way to the audio frequency, which now we're talking about kilohertz range.
Right. That's a fascinating piece of education for us. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Yeah. Well, a couple follow-up questions. You started your career down in Argentina and then migrated north to the United States, right?
With some steps in the middle. So I got my physics degree in Argentina, and then I went to do my PhD in Canada. I went farther north, and then I did a postdoctoral degree also in Canada, and then I moved to Germany, further studies, all related to magnetic resonance. And from Germany, I came to San Diego initially it was as a researcher in a company here in San Diego.
And one thing led to another, and here you are today with your company.
And what's interesting, here I am today, and several of the people working for me are from Argentina. Some of them are pure coincidence. Our main advisor is the son of Argentinians. Our first pathologist working with us is Argentinian. And our first recruit was an Argentinian American, let's say. So we're about to impose Spanish as the official.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, this has been really instructive and really interesting, Pablo. I really appreciate the time. I have one last question for you. What do you dare to dream?
I think, if I look at what's the motivation and, when we go through difficulties, what keeps the focus on just do it, because I look at what's at the end of that tunnel, right? What is at the end of that tunnel is that this device is in many places, scanning many people, and you change the life of many, many people.
Mm-hmm.
And it will come through the numbers, right? When you have so many millions of people that will have a disease that will go into something that would be a lot more severe because it's a silent disease, can you reverse that, right? Can you stop it? Can you prevent it? And I think you can. So my goal is to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
To deliver this technology effectively. Yeah, it's a business. We all have to make money, revenues, it's regulated. But at the end of the day, that's what we're all going to cheer for, right? That this is out and it's really changing the life of many people. I think we're going to change the pathways of the way you do diagnostic for liver disease, because we are preventing a heart attack. We start very early on with the liver disease. So we are going to have these new technologies, not only ours, there'll be others that come early in the cycle and they're low cost and many people can have it. And I think I have an obligation now that we discovered this and we have this invention to deliver it properly. So it makes it to the masses.
Fantastic. That's a great vision. Thank you for spending your time today with us, Pablo. This has been really interesting. Appreciate it.
And thank you so much.
Thanks to our guests today for their great insights on DARE, the podcast for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders. If you'd like your story to be featured on DARE, just contact us at info@darwaft.com. DARE is brought to you by Darwaft, the tech team that can make your vision a reality.